Friends, mind your shaft. Especially new sailboat owners out there, it could be super easy to not realize that your shaft is freewheeling. Most sailors, when we get the sails up, we're going to put the engine in neutral, verify that we're under sail power, and then turn off that engine. When the marine diesel engine is turned off and in neutral, that allows the propeller shaft to spin in a freewheeling sort of way, and it won't drive the transmission or the engine. It's much like bicycle wheels when you're not pedaling. You pedal, 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 and then stop pedaling, and the bicycle wheels spin. Same thing with a propeller shaft, except your propulsion through the water is spinning the propeller, and that in turn spins the shaft. The primary concern with the shaft freewheeling is the potential wear and tear on transmission parts, such as clutch discs, washers, coupling bolts, the cutlass bearing, the shaft itself, all parts that can just wear over time with that freewheeling. On the other side of the coin though, if the shaft is locked, that can cause the propeller to actually drag on the speed of the boat. And that's where a folding prop might come in. A folding or feathering prop aligns itself with the water flow automatically. So that's a great solution to prevent drag when your shaft is locked. In the first 2 years of owning Silverheels, it was recommended by my mechanic to recondition the transmission, which was an expensive proposition. Who wants to spend $1,000, $2,000 on a reconditioned transmission? Yet it was recommended to me to do. Even after that, when I upgraded to a folding prop, I still had issues with the shaft freewheeling. And I ultimately had to take pains to lock the shaft first to facilitate that folding of the propeller. Given that I had a folding prop, and given that I really wasn't sure whether or not it was a bad or good thing for the freewheeling to occur, I was very inconsistent about locking the shaft methodically and preventing that wear and tear. After owning Silverheels for nearly 4 years, I decided to take her on an adventure. I planned to take her north, up Lake Michigan, and into Lake Huron. There's the North Channel in Lake Huron, which is basically in Canada. And that's where I propose to spend some time anchoring and enjoying those cruising grounds. However, when I went on that adventure, I experienced a problem that could very likely be correlated to the freewheeling of the prop shaft over time. Here's the story. Kathy and I, a few years ago, we decided, we planned for this well in advance, and we wanted to go to the North Channel in Lake Huron. So that is like 400 miles north. Basically over 350, right, to get to Lake Huron. And we left on this morning. We took all planned for 2 weeks off so we could just go and cruise up there. And we took Silverheels, my boat, which is a 42-foot Ketch, and we headed off on one morning. We had nice wind starting out, and then the wind died. We ended up going into the night with the motor on. And by the next morning, the wind still hadn't come up, and we had the Michigan shoreline in sight, and we just headed north until we ended up at Ludington. We were off at the port of Ludington, and we decided to pop in there. It was maybe midday, and we thought, well, we'll get some more diesel. We go in there, and it was very easy to get onto the gas dock, and we got gas, and the crew, Kathy and one other, suggested that maybe we get a temporary dock for a little bit, and we can get a little rest and maybe get a meal and shower and do whatever we need. It was in Ludington where this copious amount of seaweed got wrapped up around the base of the propeller. And then we got back to sailing, right? So now it's mid to late afternoon. Off we go. We're going up the Michigan shoreline. We still don't have any wind, so we're under engine power. And it gets kind of duskish where the night's coming on. We go through these fishermen, right? And Kathy is on the helm at this point. It's her shift. Time goes on. All of a sudden, the other crew member says, hey, something just happened. She heard a clunk or something. And Kathy is out here, and she says, I lost propulsion. And I come up, and sure enough, you know, even if she guns it or whatever, the boat is not responding to the engine. So we kind of concluded on the spot that we probably lost the propeller at that point. So now we were in a little bit of a pickle, right? So we're close enough to shore that I called the Coast Guard, and I just talked about them. You know, hey, what should we do? What's the closest place? And I went online a little bit and took a look, and they were saying, you know what, you want to go to a port, and then they'll tow you in, because if you get somebody out to tow you where you're at, that'll just be in a very expensive ride. What you want is to get close to a port that they're going to tow you in, and then they just tow you in the last couple of miles. It's a much more cost-effective solution. So then, okay, well, which port? Do I go back south or do I go north? So I decided to go further north and head up toward Traverse Bay, where there's some cities that have boat yards there, and I thought that'd be the better idea. Though that meant that we would have to go through the Manitou Channel, which is kind of like an island and the mainland, and you have to kind of go through that. It takes us until almost daylight to get through that passage, which is only, I don't know, how long is that passage? 10 miles? Oh, it took us 4 or 5 hours to get 10 miles, I'd say, to get through there. We finally get through on the other side, and now all of a sudden we have a lot more wind, right? It was a lot easier from that point forward to get the Manitou Passage, and I'd say we went another 6 to 8 hours up toward that Leelanau Peninsula. And then the wind kind of dies, so we call a tow, and they tow us in, and this is July 4th. So we get the tow guy to bring us in front of a boatyard, and then we drop anchor. And he helped us, make sure that, he helped pull the boat back to get a little tension on the anchor. And then they left us there for July 4th. We just waited for the next day, and the next day the boatyard goes in there, and we go in and tell them, hey, we got this issue. Can you help us out? They said, well, we really don't have the resources to maintain or try to fix anything on the fly, but we'll haul you out, and you can work on your boat if you want. I said, well, I'll take it. Let's haul it out, because I got to deal with this. And so they hauled out the boat, and the first thing I noticed is that there was all sorts of seaweed wrapped around the anchor shaft, or the propeller shaft. It is a folding prop, right? So the folding props, it means that basically when it's not in use, it'll fold so that the water just goes right by and it doesn't spin. That decreases wear and tear on your transmission. Because that seaweed was wrapped up there, I doubt it was folding, right? It was just kind of stuck in one spot. So that wasn't great. It is possible that it could have caused extra torsion on the transmission, but the good news is that the prop is there. The prop is there, right? So I didn't drop a prop. And it turned out what happened, and I actually realized this before they brought it up, is that the shaft, where it connects to the transmission, it's a flange connection, right, with 6 bolts going through 2 flat surfaces, like a coupling, and the bolts sheared off. 2 bolts had worked themselves out, and the remaining 4 bolts had just sheared off. And so the shaft, even though the transmission was spinning, the shaft was not connected to it, so it wasn't spinning too, and that, as a result, the propeller wasn't spinning. The old bolts that were sheared off have to come out of that flange so that we can connect it with new bolts. Once we get those old bolts out, the space to work in there was like, you couldn't do it. Even with a 90-degree drill bit, you couldn't get enough leverage and pressure. So I worked on it for like 2-3 days, trying to figure out different solutions to get these bolts out, so I could ultimately reconnect this connection, and gave up. And we decided to bring the boat back to Crowley's to fix it there. So now we're looking at a 3-day passage back, and we took the boat all the way back down with no propulsion on a 74-hour trip to Crowley's, and then we got towed in there. So we had to get a towboat to get us out of that boatyard. We had to get back into the water. We had to coordinate a towboat to be there when they put us in the water, so that the towboat could then pull us out. They then got us out over, clear of the point, and then we just sailed out. And then for 3 days, it was an adventure coming back down with some wind. We had plenty of sporty wind on the way back. Went all the way back to Crowley's, and then got towed in there.
We made the trip back quite nicely.
Yeah, it was a fun adventure. My home boatyard in Chicago had to ultimately pull the transmission out to get access to those recessed bolts that were in the transmission flange so that they could extract them. They pulled out the transmission, extracted those bolts, reinserted the transmission, and then connected the two flange couplings together, the prop shaft to the transmission flange, and used 6 new bolts to put that all back together. I can't help but think that allowing the freewheeling of that propeller shaft contributed to the wear of those bolts and ultimately contributed to maybe 2 of them pulling out over time and the remainder shearing off. That wear and tear could have very easily been, multiple years of freewheeling of that prop shaft. I'm sure there's other opinions about how to deal with freewheeling or whether or not it's acceptable or not acceptable. I'd really love to hear your thoughts in the comments. So please, if you have an opinion or you have an experience that you'd like to share, please leave a comment below. I'd also tell you that in the off season, checking those bolts that hold that coupling together is on my off season checklist. During the winter, I check those bolts. Now when we go for a sail, I religiously prevent that freewheeling from occurring. Once we get the sails up, I will put the boat into neutral and then turn off the engine. I'll pinch the boat into the wind to slow down the boat speed. And eventually, when we get down to around 2 knots, that's where I'll go down and check the transmission. I'll listen for whirring, and then I will open up the sole panel and look down to the transmission to verify that there's no spinning the prop shaft. Once that's verified, I'll go back up top side, lock the transmission into reverse gear. That's going to lock that shaft. So then I come back off of the wind and trim the sails, get some boat speed going, and verify that I still don't hear any whirring. That shaft should be locked at that point, and the folding prop should just fold along the water flow, and everything from that point should be good. I could theoretically put the boat into neutral, but I tend not to unless I feel that I will forget about putting it in neutral before I turn that engine back on, which is a must. You must, if you do not put the boat into neutral before turning on the engine, you are incurring wear and tear in that transmission that way. I want to thank my subscribers for your support. I really appreciate you watching. To those of you that stay to the end of this video, please consider pressing that like button. It would really help out the channel. This is Sailor Eric. Thanks for watching.